Let's move on to the projector and to the example. I don't happen to have one up here. The example of a mental projector. This is the only example of definition that has no inner authority. Let's imagine that there's a meeting on Jupiter, and they're deciding how to design the incarnative hierarchy. I have mentioned this, and I mention this often just to keep generators in their place, because generators think they're so important that they have to have two kinds. Projectors have more variations, many more variations. The whole business of this movement, the race, where the projectors are trying to get into their position at the front. Well, actually, there's some projectors that are only allowed to get as far as the middle. And there's some projectors that have to make sure that the reflectors aren't blissed out on the program. And, there's a place for different kinds of projectors mixed into this whole movement going along. Because remember, it's not this kind of a hierarchy. It isn't. So they can be just slightly ahead in the middle group that's in the middle of another middle group. You really have to see this is quite a thing. And mostly what you see, it looks like sperm. I don't mean to be uncomfortably graphic this morning, but it does. It's like there's a bundle of projectors and generators that make up the main body, and then you have this drifting off tail of reflectors and manifestors. That's basically, if you could see it moving along in space, it looks like a comet with a tail, this kind of thing. It has that kind of shape to it. So I don't want you to think in terms of traditional hierarchical structures, because that's not going to work. The other thing is, I don't want you to lump all projectors together, because you cannot. You cannot. You can't imagine how fundamentally different the role is in the totality of a splenic projector as opposed to an emotional projector. After all, you have to realize that their responsibility within the totality is to be able to guide the building potential of the generative force. In other words, it's a new architect in town. It's a new architecture that is being brought in. The mental projector is unlike anything else. As a matter of fact, a mental projector, in many ways, shouldn't even be called a projector. And this is to make sure that all you generators with we're 70%, that you get the picture that there is a lot of variation out there, but particularly when you're dealing with projectors because of their role. Remember something about a projector. If a projector is going to guide, they guide out of their life force. A splenic life force guides in a certain way. An emotional life force guides in a certain way. They're very different and they don't mix well. They don't. And there's an enormous difference between right angle and left angle projectors. This image of this comet-like thing moving in space. You can see that left angle and right angle projectors will be in different places in that structure, because they will operate differently. Projectors are incredibly complex. They are incredibly complex. That's one of the things why it appears that I am supporting projectors altruistically. Projectors get a 30% discount, blah, 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 the encouragement of projector education. But in fact, if it is only projectors that will ultimately be able to differentiate their own kind. You see, it's in mutation. It's in mutation. This is a mutative process. And it's only since 1987 that projectors were identified as a force. And it's taken time for that even now to get into the consciousness. And to see the projectors have been lumped together from the beginning. As a matter of fact, I really ignored them at the beginning because I could only launch this knowledge by attracting generators at first. But the fact of the matter is that it is projectors themselves who will ultimately see and recognize the differentiation between this kind of projector and that kind of projector, and ultimately what their roles will be. The mental projector is supposed to be at the very, very, very head of the pack. It looks like the tip of a rocket. You see that with the defined head and the defined ajna, this big white thing behind it. This sits at the front of the pack and races along. That's what it's designed for. Because this is the only variation of any configuration that is here to specialize in outer authority. Outer authority. They are the embodiment of outer authority. In other words, they're here to tell everyone what to do. And we all know, if you know them, that they try, whether they know anything or not. But it's something very important to recognize about the mental projector, is that the mental projector is like the pilot at the front of the pack. Or the lead scout, or the whatever the case may be. That's what they're there for. Very different than the other projectors. After all, the other projectors have inner authority. Now, what you've seen in the reflector is that the reflector has no inner authority and no unique life force. But the difficulty for the mental projector is it has a fixed life force. It has a fixed nature that it's here to trust. There's nothing more difficult than getting a mental projector whose mind is designed to be an outer authority, not to accept that authority for themselves. Until the other projectors wake up, they won't. It's something to understand about the mental projector. The mental projector cannot play the reflector's game. That the mental projector only has their life force to depend on, their definition. It is who they are. It's here what they're to be recognized for. It is incredibly difficult for them. Incredibly difficult for them to give up the power of mind as an inner authority. Now remember something about the way in which projectors learn. They learn through the mirror. They learn through the mirror. And the funniest thing about the mental projector is that though it's the pilot in that sense, and you can see that all of us are not necessarily going in the right direction, because our pilots don't know where the hell they're going. And fortunately, there's still a few manifestors holding on to the lead, saying, I know where we're going, I'm going there. But whatever the case may be, what you have to see is that mental projectors will only wake up in relationship to an awakened projector. In other words, a projector that has inner authority is the only positive force for a projector that has no inner authority. I will go through this when we get to the relationship level. But it's one of the things to understand about the way in which genetics takes us away from our most valuable allies. In other words, that it makes us attractive to not simply what is different, but it makes other types attractive to us. So you have non-energy types with energy types. You have projectors who are with generators. The projector-generator relationship is for business only in that sense. It is about the relationship that can change and rebuild our world. But it's not about intimacy, and it's not about the capacity to be of value deeply to the other. Projector with projector, like any type with any type, there is easily a recognition of camaraderie, of being similar. And in this particular case, to see how important it is. There are certain phenomena that you see in design. For example, the 2034 can only be guided by a 4323. Now, most people think that that means that anybody with a 4323 can guide a 2034. It's not true. It's not true. I mean, it's better than getting advice from an 1156 if you're a 2034. But the reality is that the 4323 that's supposed to be guiding that 2034, the pure manifesting generator, being guided by the pure mental projector. Pure mental projector. I mean, that's supposed to be the relationship. That's one of the, perfect relationships that you find. And all of these are about the way in which the program has designed us to work in our relationships hierarchically. And so it begins with you seeing and you teaching that when your students come to Projector, they are coming to a vast world of study. I mean, think about it. You can have 8 centers defined and still be a projector. The projector is so complex. There are so many variations. And when you think about what their role is, that is the role they're here to aspire to, the purpose they're here to fulfill, that each and every different nuance of projector needs to be opened up in all of its potential. It's why I spend a lot of time now promoting projector education. Not so in the direct sense that they'll be better analysts or teachers or any of that. It's that, by getting that education, they're going to be able to see themselves through other projectors and begin to see how other projectors are different. Begin to demark this and open it up. It's very easy to talk about the difference between a generator and a manifesting generator. It's very easy. I mean, there's actually very, very, very little difference between them, other than the fact that the manifesting generator has this illusion of metamorphosis. And has the illusion of metamorphosis, which is always out of sync. I mean, that's the only dilemma of the manifesting generator, is that when they jump, they miss things. And the whole thing for them is that the things that they miss eventually catch up with them. But you're still dealing with generators. And generators are generators. But projectors aren't. They're not being driven by the same motor. They're not. Some of them don't have any energy in that sense. The non-energy projector. Someone who's a 1648. You think you can compare them to somebody who is 3955 as a projector? The difference between being an energy projector and being a non-energy projector, and being a mental projector. I mean, these are variations that are so different from each other. They're more different than manifestor to projector. Because remember something about the projector. It only gets to generate and manifest in its connection to the other. And each of these different variations of projector hook in a different way. They guide in a different way. So when you're dealing with this business of inner authority, all you can really do with mental projectors who have no inner authority is remind them that the only thing that matters for them is their strategy. Period. That's it. It isn't going to do you any good. They will hear it. They will know. They will know that they're not here to listen to their mind, but then there's nothing else to listen to if they don't listen to their mind. It's not like they have an option. It's not like they can suddenly trust their sacral, their emotions, their whatever. They can't. There is no option. You're just saying to them, well, I remind them they have a strategy. And I wait for them to be educated by other projectors. And for them to educate other projectors. Because it's only amongst the projectors. Remember, they learn in the mirror. And not my mirror. I mean, yes, I have a certain capacity to be empathic with the projector. Simply because as a divine person, I also have an open sacral. So I can have this sense of it at that level. But then again, I'm an energy type, so immediately the connection breaks down. Only projectors can learn from projectors. Only projectors learn from the other. So this is the whole business. So when you look at this lack of inner authority in the projector, you have to be able to let them know the two sides of this coin. That it is a very magical incarnation in many ways. It's a very special incarnation. And that as they develop an understanding of the system, their outer authority will gain power. I mean, after all, this is a very special kind of mind that exists in the mental projector. But at the same time, the only thing that you can help them with is just remind them of what their strategy is. And as they're going along and as they're investigating and studying, as projectors will do, slowly but surely they'll begin to get a grasp on the way in which they can feel stable without being dependent on their mind making those decisions. Very, very long process. After all, projectors have a longer process than any other type. And what I mean by that is that they're not here simply to verify the experience, but they have to become masters of the system. And obviously, that's not even something you do in 7 years. That's not something you do in 14 years. I mean, this is a huge knowledge base. So, the thing with them is patience. Wait for the movement. It's all this movement. If everybody could just relax, just relax. The vehicles are moving. The monopoles are taking them precisely down the track they're supposed to go. I mean, it's also obvious. And so much of our dilemma is that we don't realize the advantages that come to us from not being still. The concept of, most of the things that we believe in come from projectors. I mean, it just comes from projectors because they're inventing all the systems. They're making up all the recognition programs. They're doing all of that. And you have to see, we need new architecture. I mean, projectors have to wake up. And the last ones to wake up will be the ones that are supposed to be at the head of the pack. And by the way, they'll get there. It's not like you're doomed. If, you're sitting here with mental projection, you're not doomed. Don't worry about it. You'll get there. By 2027, we're going to have mental projectors, at least a few of them, that are going to be out there, saying, hey, I made it. Remember, it's fractals. It doesn't have to be big numbers. It's just the process that we're all in.